The sun hung low over Camp Pendleton, casting long golden streaks across the dry training fields. The air smelled of sweat, dust, and the faint tang of gun oil, a familiar perfume to anyone who had spent years living in the Marine Corps. A chorus of voices rang out from the mess hall patio, young Marines laughing, swapping stories about the previous night's drills or bragging about their latest feats on the obstacle course. The world felt ordinary, familiar, safe, until a single tap interrupted it. Sergeant Amanda Keller walked by. Her cane struck the cracked pavement with a rhythmic click-clack that made several Marines pause mid-conversation. There was no dramatic entrance, no loud declaration. She simply moved, one careful step after another, her posture proud despite the obvious handicap. Her left arm was gone from the elbow down, replaced by a neat bandage that hugged the stump. Her uniform was crisp, her boots polished, but there was no mistaking the history written into the way she carried herself. Every scar, every twitch of her jaw, every measured step spoke of someone who had endured more than most could imagine, and yet refused to be defined by it. Whispers spread quickly. "Is that Keller?" One Marine murmured, "Wait, she lost her arm?" Another voice, tinged with disbelief, asked, "How's she even walking without a prosthetic?" The youngest recruits, whose understanding of combat was limited to video clips and stories, exchanged awkward glances. Some smirked, others stared in silent pity. None knew the half of what she had endured. Across the field, a team of Navy SEALs observed the scene from a shaded corner near the barracks. They were a different breed, trained to read threats, body language, and intention in microseconds. Chief Petty Officer Ryan Brooks's eyes narrowed as he studied the Marines' reactions. He had seen this before: arrogance, skepticism, the quiet dismissal of someone who had already earned respect, but had not yet forced others to see it. Brooks knew better than to intervene too early. Lessons learned on a drill field left a stronger mark than any lecture. He let the group watch, let them underestimate her, and waited. Amanda's steps were deliberate, almost ceremonial. She didn't rush. She didn't stagger. Every movement conveyed control and quiet authority. Even the youngest recruits, who had initially smirked, found themselves instinctively straightening their posture as she passed. There was something magnetic about her presence, though none of them could name it yet. She paused briefly by the edge of the field, her eyes scanning the training course she had conquered countless times before. Memories flashed behind her eyes. Afghanistan, dust-choked streets, the sudden eruption of gunfire, the moment her life changed forever. Her arm had been gone for over a year, but the fear and adrenaline were still as vivid as the day it happened. She had returned home not broken, but hardened, and yet, in a quiet way, she carried a profound humility with her. As she moved on, a group of younger Marines muttered comments under their breath, hoping she wouldn't hear. "Guess women aren't built for this," one whispered. "Wonder how long it took her to get back here," another added, smirking. They had no idea that the woman in front of them had spent months in rehabilitation, pushing through pain, infection, and self-doubt, only to return stronger and smarter than before. Brooks's jaw tightened. The SEALs knew it wasn't Amanda who needed proving. It was the Marines who had made assumptions. His mind raced as he formulated a plan. By the end of tomorrow, they would all understand, not through words, but through experience, what courage, leadership, and resilience truly looked like. The rest of the day passed in a haze of normality. Amanda made her way to the mess hall for a late lunch. She chose a quiet table in a corner, careful not to draw attention. Around her, the chatter continued, jokes, teasing, discussions about drills and upcoming missions. Some of the same recruits who had whispered earlier now tried to appear casual, stealing glances, unsure how to behave. Amanda didn't flinch. She knew their attention was not praise, but curiosity, tinged with judgment. She simply ate her meal with practiced calm, her mind wandering back to the deployments that had defined her. She thought about the Afghan village, where she had led a patrol under fire, the moment the IED changed her life forever, and the faces of the men she had saved and the civilians she couldn't. Every bite of food reminded her that survival wasn't just physical. It was emotional, mental, and moral. Ryan Brooks approached quietly, not to interrupt, but to observe. He leaned casually against a pillar, his arms crossed, eyes fixed on the wounded Marine. He didn't need to see her fight physically. He already knew she would, but he needed to see how she carried herself in the arena of human judgment. Some lessons required witnesses. Others required humility. Tomorrow, both would collide. By late afternoon, Amanda left the mess hall and moved toward the obstacle course. She inspected each station with a practiced eye. The rope climbs, the mud pits, the wall climbs. Every muscle memory she had spent years honing whispered in her ears. Her steps were careful but confident. Her eyes scanned each obstacle for strategy, for nuance. She would not be the fastest, and she would not pretend to be, but she would command respect by showing competence and leadership. As shadows grew longer across the field, the younger Marines began murmuring again, this time with uncertainty rather than judgment. Even those who had mocked her now felt a strange tug of respect. They didn't fully understand it. They couldn't. Yet, but something in her presence demanded acknowledgement. Brooks turned to the SEALs behind him. "Tomorrow," he said softly, "they'll get their lesson. Not from me, not from lectures. From her. Let them see what leadership really looks like." The SEALs nodded silently. They had watched the best of the best, had trained with the toughest warriors, and yet they understood the power of this moment. Leadership was earned in the eyes of others, and Amanda Keller had already begun to claim hers, silently, steadily, without fanfare. As the sun dipped below the horizon, Amanda stood on the edge of the field one last time, her gaze fixed on the distant ocean beyond the base. The wind tugged at her uniform, whispering reminders of the battles past and the challenges ahead. She didn't flinch. She didn't waver. She simply prepared herself. Tomorrow, the obstacle course would test every Marine present. But by the time the day ended, she would also test their assumptions, their biases, and the very measure of their courage. And she was ready. The next morning arrived like a blazing challenge. The sun barely peeking over the horizon lit up the training field, turning the dew on the grass into sharp, glimmering diamonds. The Marines shuffled into formation, rubbing sleep from their eyes and grumbling quietly about the early hour. They were used to drills, mud, and exhaustion, but today felt different, though they couldn't put a name to the unease, gnawing at the edge of their consciousness. Sergeant Amanda Keller appeared at the edge of the field, cane in hand, prosthetic stump hidden beneath her uniform sleeve. She looked calm, her eyes scanning the recruits like a predator measuring its prey. To anyone watching, she seemed fragile, almost delicate. Yet the SEALs standing nearby, including Chief Ryan Brooks, knew better. They had seen soldiers like her before, those who had lost limbs, yet carried strength that could bend steel. The Marines whispered among themselves. "She's leading?" One muttered. Another smirked. "This will be funny." A few of the younger recruits exchanged smirks and rolled eyes. No one expected Amanda to move fast or command authority, and that assumption would soon backfire spectacularly. Brooks stepped forward, his voice cutting through the morning air like a blade. Today's exercise isn't about strength. It isn't about speed. It's about leadership, teamwork, and courage under pressure. Teams will be mixed, Marines and SEALs together. Each team must have a leader. Choose wisely. The room fell silent. Eyes darted around, hesitating to make a move. Some Marines looked at each other, unsure who would step forward. Amanda lifted her chin slightly and said, "I'll lead a team." The words were quiet but unwavering. For a brief moment, the field seemed to hold its breath. A few Marines snorted. One low-ranking recruit whispered, "Wait. Her? Really? She can't even lift that rope wall with one arm." Another muttered, "This is going to be a disaster." Amanda ignored them. She had faced worse than underestimation and ridicule. War had taught her resilience. The battlefield had taught her focus. The worst thing in the world wasn't danger, it was doubt. Brooks studied her carefully. This wasn't about proving her skill. It was about letting the Marines experience the lesson themselves. He nodded slightly, signaling to the SEALs to stand ready. The obstacle course was set. The mud pits glistened, the rope walls loomed like silent sentinels, and the trenches waited to swallow the careless. The whistle blew, piercing the morning air. Teams surged forward, and Amanda immediately fell into rhythm. Her voice carried, precise and commanding. Jones left. Ramirez, help Dean over the wall. Keep moving. Each command landed like a hammer, exact and deliberate. The Marines around her stumbled at first, unsure how to respond to a leader who was physically challenged, yet commanding authority effortlessly. Private Dean, the same one who had whispered doubt the day before, grumbled under his breath. "This is ridiculous. She's slowing us down." But the moment came when Amanda reached the first wall, and Dean realized she wasn't asking anyone to lift her. She was guiding, demonstrating, and showing the safest, fastest way for everyone to succeed. Every command, every action was calculated. The SEALs observed silently, leaning against the sidelines, watching the unfolding drama. Brooks crossed his arms, his jaw tight. This was the exact scenario he had been waiting for. The Marines had judgment clouding their eyes, but the exercise would strip that away, layer by layer, until respect replaced doubt. Amanda moved fluidly, cane tapping and prosthetic stump hidden, guiding her team through each obstacle with patience and ferocity. When a Marine slipped into the mud, she extended a hand without hesitation. When a rope snapped, she adjusted on the fly, instructing her team to compensate while keeping morale high. Her leadership wasn't loud or theatrical. It was quiet, confident, and effective. Dean's frustration slowly morphed into astonishment. She's not just keeping up. She's leading. He stumbled forward, mud splashing across his face, trying to mimic her instructions. Amanda barked an order, not scolding but correcting, and Dean followed instinctively. His attitude shifted, a mixture of shame and awe. The same young Marines who had whispered doubts were now falling in line, realizing that this wounded Marine was teaching them more in minutes than most instructors could in months. During a pause, Brooks walked among the teams, his eyes sharp. He saw the expressions on the faces of the Marines: confusion, respect, disbelief. "Keep your heads down," he muttered under his breath, "and watch." That's how leadership works. Even the SEALs, hardened men accustomed to the worst, felt the tension in the air. Amanda Keller had become the gravity that held everyone's focus. By midday, fatigue settled over the group. Sweat poured down faces, mud-plastered clothes, muscles ached. Amanda herself was exhausted, but her resolve never wavered. She moved with the precision of someone who had fought to live, who had stared death in the eyes and returned. The Marines began to notice the subtle things, the way she encouraged the weakest, the way she assessed each obstacle with strategic foresight, the way she never asked anyone to do more than they could handle while pushing them to exceed their limits. During a water break, whispers started again. But this time, they weren't mocking. They were questions tinged with respect. "Did you see how she carried Dean's gear through the trench?" One Marine asked quietly. Another added, "She's unbelievable." Even the skeptics felt a twinge of guilt for their earlier doubts. Amanda herself barely paused. She knew the eyes of the SEALs and Brooks were watching every move. Their presence wasn't intimidating. It was validating. She had returned from war, not to prove herself to the world, but to teach others the lesson she had learned the hard way, that courage, leadership, and integrity are forged in adversity, not privilege. As the afternoon sun climbed, the obstacle course loomed larger, demanding more from the Marines. Brooks finally stepped forward, blowing his whistle sharply. All teams regroup. Time for the next phase. The teams scrambled, muscles trembling, breaths heavy. Amanda's team followed her lead without question, moving with coordination that had been absent just hours ago. Even Dean, who had doubted her every step, now respected her silently. He realized that the strength she displayed wasn't just physical, it was mental and moral. Amanda's presence commanded not just attention, but trust. By the time the SEALs began observing their timed runs, the lesson had already begun to sink in. Amanda caught a brief glance at Brooks, who gave the slightest nod. It was a small acknowledgement, but it carried weight. The mission today wasn't about physical dominance. It was about respect, courage, and leadership. And Amanda Keller was proving one step, one command, and one act of determination at a time that she embodied all three. As Part 2 drew to a close, the field no longer felt like a simple training ground. It had transformed into a crucible of human character. The Marines who had mocked Amanda in the morning now found themselves reconsidering every assumption. The SEALs, experienced and battle-hardened, saw the undeniable truth. Courage was not measured by limbs, gender, or past injury. It was measured in action, resolve, and the will to lead even when others doubted you. By dusk, when the drills concluded, the Marines were mud-splattered, exhausted, and changed. Amanda Keller didn't smile or bask in praise. She simply wiped the sweat from her brow, adjusted her uniform, and prepared for the final phase. The moment when the SEALs would step in, and the full lesson would crystallize for every Marine present. Brooks watched her from the sidelines, arms folded, expression unreadable. He didn't need to say a word. The Marines had seen enough already. Tomorrow, the lesson would reach its climax, and no one present would ever forget it. The following morning, the training field was alive with anticipation. The sun hadn't fully climbed above the horizon, yet already the air was thick with tension and the scent of dew-laden grass. Marines lined up along the perimeter of the obstacle course, mud-stained from yesterday's drills, muscles still aching but spirits alert. The chatter that had filled the air the previous day was replaced with cautious silence. Everyone knew today would be different. Sergeant Amanda Keller stood at the edge of the field, her posture straight, cane in hand. The morning breeze fluttered through her uniform, and the early light reflected off the glinting edges of her polished boots. Even from a distance, she seemed to radiate authority, a calm center in a field of uncertainty. She scanned the group, noting the subtle expressions, skepticism, curiosity, and the faintest hint of respect from those who had begun to see her strength yesterday. Chief Petty Officer Ryan Brooks walked to the center of the field, his hands clasped behind his back. The SEALs, silent and imposing, flanked him. "Listen up," he said, voice carrying over the quiet field. "Today, you'll be divided into teams. Mixed teams, Marines and SEALs together. Each team will select a leader. Your leader will determine not only your strategy, but your success. This is not about who can run fastest or climb highest. This is about leadership, resilience, and cohesion under pressure." The Marines shifted uneasily. The word leader echoed in their minds. Some looked around at their peers, hoping someone else would step up. The notion of choosing a leader, someone to command them through a brutal obstacle course, suddenly seemed heavier than any drill they had ever faced. Amanda lifted her chin slightly and said, "I'll lead one of the teams." Her voice was calm, even, commanding without being loud. A ripple of disbelief passed through the Marines. A few smirked, muttering under their breaths. "She's kidding, right?" one said. "She can't even climb the rope with one arm." Brooks ignored the whispers. His gaze was fixed on her. He had seen countless soldiers doubt others based on assumptions, and he knew that letting them follow her, seeing her in action, would shatter every preconceived notion. Leadership, after all, was proven through action, not words. The teams were quickly organized, each mixing Marines and SEALs. Amanda's team, despite the whispers of doubt, followed her naturally, drawn by the quiet authority she exuded. When the whistle blew, she was the first to step forward, cane tapping lightly on the ground, eyes sharp and focused. "Move fast, stay together." She barked. "Jones on the rope wall. Ramirez, cover the trench. Dean, follow my lead, keep your feet planted." Her voice carried a rhythm that commanded attention. At first, some of the Marines hesitated, unsure how to respond to a leader who had a visible physical limitation. But as Amanda moved, directing them, correcting minor mistakes with calm precision, the skepticism began to fade. She wasn't asking them to do more than they could. She was guiding them to do it efficiently and safely. The rope wall loomed ahead, slick with morning dew. Amanda approached it with measured steps. Using her cane for balance, she demonstrated the proper technique for gripping the ropes, teaching Marines how to distribute weight, anticipate shifts, and avoid injury. Then, with a controlled effort, she climbed. One arm, precise foot placement, and sheer determination propelled her upward. The younger Marines watched, jaws slack, as the seemingly impossible became routine. Dean, who had mocked her before, gritted his teeth. "She's faster than me," he muttered under his breath. His embarrassment was palpable, but he swallowed it, moving quickly to mimic her strategy. Amanda didn't pause to admonish him. She kept her eyes on the rest of the team, ensuring they were all progressing safely. As they navigated the mud pit, she guided them in pairs, instructing them to pull each other through, rather than relying solely on brute strength. Her voice was firm but encouraging. "Teamwork is faster than ego," she said. Her words, simple but profound, resonated with the group. Slowly, the whispers of doubt were replaced with focus, cooperation, and an emerging sense of camaraderie. Meanwhile, the SEALs ran the course beside them, silent observers, ready to intervene only if necessary. Brooks walked among the teams, noting every glance, every hesitation, every act of bravery. He knew that Amanda's physical limitation would not be the focus. Her leadership would be. Every misstep, every challenge, every decision on the course would teach the Marines what respect truly meant. Halfway through the course, one Marine slipped in the mud, sliding toward the edge of the trench. Amanda didn't hesitate. Without warning, she lunged. One arm braced against the muddy earth, gripping his belt with the prosthetic stump. She anchored him, preventing a fall that could have injured both of them. The team froze for a moment, astonished. For once, words were unnecessary. The lesson was visible, tangible, undeniable. Dean's earlier doubts melted into awe. "She saved me," he whispered. "She's incredible." The rest of the team nodded silently. Their expressions had shifted from mockery to respect, from doubt to recognition. Leadership wasn't about brute force. Leadership was about decisiveness, courage, and care for those who commanded. Amanda didn't slow. She kept moving, adjusting to obstacles, helping fallen Marines, and keeping the group together. Her voice remained calm, precise. "Move left, cover the wall." Step carefully. Don't rush. Ramirez flanked the trench. Each command was met with compliance. Each action reinforced the lesson. Respect is earned, not assumed. By midday, fatigue had set in. Marines were exhausted, mud-covered, and drenched in sweat. Yet Amanda's team remained cohesive, moving with coordination that had been absent the day before. The younger Marines, who had doubted her, now followed instinctively. Even Dean, humbled and inspired, found himself leading another recruit through a particularly treacherous mud pit, repeating the techniques Amanda had demonstrated. Brooks observed quietly, a faint smile hidden beneath his stoic expression. This was exactly what he had envisioned. The Marines were learning not through lectures, but through experience. Their biases were crumbling, replaced with something far more enduring, respect earned through action, not assumption. The final obstacle approached, a steep, jagged wall that required climbing, coordination, and grit. Amanda sized it up, her cane tucked under her arm, prosthetic hidden. She demonstrated the climbing technique carefully, showing her team the safest approach, then ascended with a controlled determination. Her movements were flawless, precise, and inspiring. One by one, her team followed, executing her instructions perfectly. As they reached the top, mud and sweat streaking their faces, Amanda looked at her team. Their expressions were transformed. What had started as doubt and mockery had turned into awe and pride. The team had learned not just the obstacle course, but the lesson Amanda embodied: courage, resilience, and leadership are not defined by physical perfection, but by determination, action, and care for others. Brooks stepped forward, whistle in hand. Regroup teams. That's enough for today. The SEALs gathered beside him, silent and imposing. Amanda's team stood tall, mud-caked but triumphant, exchanging looks that no longer contained doubt. Respect had been earned, silently, unmistakably. Amanda wiped sweat from her brow, adjusting her uniform. She didn't smile or boast. She never did. She had done what she had come to do, lead by example. The lesson was already taking root, quietly reshaping minds, tearing down prejudices, and planting the seeds of understanding that would grow far beyond the obstacle course. Brooks surveyed the field, watching the transformation. The young Marines who had mocked her were now quiet, reflective, perhaps even humbled. He knew the real challenge was still ahead. The SEALs themselves would test them, and Amanda would have to rise to another level. But for now, the first battle had been won, the battle for respect, credibility, and acknowledgement of true leadership. As Part 3 closed, the field seemed charged with a new energy. The sun, high now in the sky, reflected off the mud and sweat-slicked uniforms, casting a golden glow over the exhausted but transformed Marines. Amanda Keller stood at the center, quiet and resolute. She had proven one truth beyond dispute: leadership is earned, courage is undeniable, and respect cannot be assumed. It must be demonstrated. Tomorrow, the SEALs would step in. And when they did, the final lesson would leave a mark that no Marine would ever forget. The sun had climbed high over the training field, heating the mud and turning every breath into a laborious task. The Marines were exhausted, their muscles screaming from yesterday's drills and the morning's obstacle course. Sweat streaked. Faces, clothes were plastered with grime, and even the youngest recruits felt a gnawing weariness they had never encountered before. But Amanda Keller's team moved forward with a steady determination, guided by her precise commands, her quiet authority cutting through the fatigue. The next challenge loomed ahead, a wide trench filled with mud, followed by a rope wall that demanded full-body coordination. Even seasoned Marines glanced at it apprehensively. Amanda approached first, cane tucked securely, prosthetic arm carefully balanced beneath her uniform. She examined the trench with sharp eyes, calculating every movement for herself and her team. She had crossed this trench hundreds of times before, but today wasn't about speed. It was about control, focus, and leadership. As the team began their approach, one Marine, Private Dean, misjudged a step and slipped, sliding toward the edge of the trench. His panicked shout cut through the air. "Ah! Help!" Amanda didn't hesitate. One-armed, she lunged, bracing herself with her prosthetic stump and her good arm. Mud splashed around them as she anchored him firmly, preventing what could have been a disastrous fall. Dean's eyes widened in shock and embarrassment. I'm fine," he stammered, but Amanda didn't release her grip until she was certain he was safe. "You'll move faster if you trust me," she said firmly, though not unkindly. "And you'll survive if you pay attention." The rest of the team watched in silence, awe replacing any lingering doubt. Amanda's actions weren't just physical demonstrations of skill. They were lessons in trust, decisiveness, and courage. For the first time, the younger Marines saw beyond her missing arm and recognized a leader who demanded respect through action. Brooks observed from the sidelines, his face unreadable, but his mind noting every reaction. He had orchestrated this scenario carefully, knowing that the breaking point, the moment where doubt would transform into respect, would arrive under pressure. And this was it. The team crossed the trench carefully, Amanda leading each movement, calling out adjustments and encouragement. Every stumble was met with guidance rather than scolding. Every minor panic attack, like Dean's, was managed with calm authority. Slowly, the Marines began to move in sync, relying on each other and, above all, on Amanda's guidance. Next came the rope wall. The mud from the trench had soaked their clothes, making the ropes slippery. Even the SEALs, hardened men accustomed to extreme physical challenges, glanced at it with caution. Amanda assessed the wall and demonstrated the proper grip and foot placement. She climbed with deliberate precision, her body moving like a machine trained by discipline and necessity. Dean attempted to follow, but his foot slipped mid-climb. Without hesitation, Amanda reached out, one-armed, using her prosthetic to anchor him and guide him upward. The team collectively held their breath. When he reached the top safely, a mixture of relief and newfound respect washed over them. "See," Amanda said simply. "Focus, coordination, trust, not excuses." The Marines began to mirror her approach. They adjusted their grips, followed her strategic cues, and even began helping each other instinctively. The transformation was subtle, but undeniable. Doubt and arrogance were replaced by cooperation and admiration. During a pause midway through the course, Amanda took a brief moment to catch her breath, wiping sweat and mud from her face. The younger Marines, who had initially whispered insults and skepticism, now watched her with reverence. Even Dean, humbled by the rescue moments earlier, offered a silent nod of acknowledgement. Brooks stepped closer, arms folded, his eyes scanning the group. "Notice the difference?" He asked no one in particular. The SEALs beside him nodded slightly. Leadership wasn't about rank or physical prowess alone. It was about presence, decisiveness, and the willingness to act when it mattered most. The final obstacle approached, a narrow, jagged wall, followed by a steep incline covered in loose soil. Fatigue had set in for everyone, muscles trembling and joints aching. Some Marines faltered, slowing their pace, considering giving up. But Amanda, ignoring her own weariness, climbed the wall first, demonstrating the technique with patience and precision. Her cane clattered against the wall as she repositioned, but she pressed forward, never faltering. "Team, move together. Watch your footing," she called. Her words carried the weight of authority, of someone who had faced real danger and lived to teach others the lesson. Every command was precise, every action deliberate. Slowly, the Marines began to mimic her movements, coordinating their efforts and helping each other over obstacles. Dean's confidence grew. "We've got this," he muttered, realizing for the first time that his earlier doubts had been misplaced. Amanda's leadership had transformed not only their physical performance, but their mindset. At the top of the incline, the team paused, catching their breaths. Mud and sweat coated their faces, yet the expressions reflected pride, amazement, and a deep respect for the Marine who had led them through exhaustion, fear, and doubt. Brooks signaled to the SEALs, who had been observing silently. "They've earned the lesson. Now it's time for the next phase," he whispered. The SEALs began moving toward the course, their presence casting an imposing shadow over the exhausted Marines. They were about to face the ultimate challenge, one that would further cement the lesson Amanda had begun to teach. That true leadership and courage transcend gender, physical limitations, and preconceived notions. Amanda gathered her team for a quick debrief. "You did well," she said quietly, her voice calm but firm. "But the day isn't over. Stay sharp. Keep your focus. Remember, leadership isn't just about getting through obstacles. It's about how you respond under pressure." The team nodded silently, still catching their breath. They had survived the trench and the rope wall, navigated the mud and the incline, and in the process, they had learned the lesson that no lecture could teach. Respect had been earned through action, determination, and courage. Brooks watched Amanda step back from her team, cane tapping lightly, prosthetic hidden. He had seen countless warriors, men and women alike, lead through adversity. But he also knew that this particular Marine, wounded, underestimated, and unwavering, had done something remarkable. She had turned doubt into admiration, skepticism into trust, and prejudice into respect. As the sun began to lower toward the horizon, casting long shadows across the field, Amanda surveyed the course once more. Tomorrow, the SEALs would take the challenge to a new level, testing not just physical endurance, but the true measure of courage and leadership. But today, she had already proven something extraordinary, that a wounded Marine could command respect, inspire courage, and lead with strength unmatched by those who had doubted her. The field was quiet, save for the labored breathing of exhausted Marines and the soft shuffle of feet in the mud. The day's events had left a mark, not only on the bodies of those who had run the course, but on their hearts and minds. Amanda Keller had shown them what true leadership looked like, and when the SEALs joined tomorrow, the final lesson would leave an indelible impression, one that would ensure no Marine present would ever underestimate the power of courage, determination, and resilience again. The morning air was sharp and cold, carrying the faint scent of salt from the nearby Pacific. The training field at Camp Pendleton, already scarred with mud and sweat from yesterday's drills, now seemed almost alive, charged with anticipation. The Marines had spent the previous day learning, struggling, and beginning to shed their doubts about Sergeant Amanda Keller. Today, the SEALs would enter, and the stakes were about to rise. Chief Petty Officer Ryan Brooks stood at the head of the field, his stance rigid and commanding. The SEAL team behind him mirrored his intensity, their reputations alone enough to silence even the boldest Marine. Their presence was not meant to intimidate, at least not directly, but it carried weight that demanded focus. These were warriors forged in some of the most brutal combat zones on Earth. Every step, every glance exuded skill, precision, and lethal competence. "Teams, today you'll face the final phase," Brooks announced, his voice cutting through the morning stillness. "Your obstacle course will be the same, but this time you'll run it with the SEALs. Sergeant Keller will continue to lead her team. No excuses. No shortcuts. Complete the course with coordination, endurance, and integrity. Your actions will prove your courage or reveal your weaknesses." The Marines shifted nervously. Whispers of fear and anticipation traveled quickly through the ranks. Amanda Keller stepped forward, cane in hand, her posture steady, prosthetic arm hidden beneath her uniform. She glanced at the approaching SEALs, noting the subtle confidence in their movements. She didn't flinch. She had faced far worse than this: wounds, combat, loss, and had returned stronger every time. "Let's begin," she said, her voice calm yet firm. She scanned her team, noting their expressions: exhaustion from previous drills, awe at her leadership, and lingering nerves about facing the SEALs. "Stick to my lead. Trust each other. Follow every command. We move together." The whistle blew, and the teams surged forward. The mud pit greeted them first, sucking at their boots and slowing momentum. Amanda moved with measured speed, demonstrating the best approach to navigate the muck. The SEALs followed effortlessly, sliding through with minimal effort, yet they never overtook her team. Instead, they matched her pace, observing, ready to respond to any misstep. Halfway through, one SEAL, Petty Officer Mitchell, feigned a stumble, deliberately testing the team's reaction. A Marine lost balance, nearly falling into the mud pit. Instinctively, Amanda extended her arm and used her prosthetic to anchor him, guiding him safely to stable ground. The Marines held their breath. Even the SEALs were impressed, not with her speed, but with her decisiveness and courage. "Focus! Eyes up! Keep moving!" Amanda shouted. Her voice was commanding, cutting through the chaos. Every movement was precise. Every decision had purpose. The team responded instinctively, moving as a single entity. Dean, who had doubted her from the beginning, glanced at her, all written across his mud-streaked face. "I can't believe she's keeping up with them. And leading us," he muttered under his breath. The realization that courage and leadership were not bound to physical perfection began to sink in. The rope wall loomed ahead, taller than before, slick with mud. SEALs approached with a controlled confidence, muscles coiling like springs. Amanda assessed it, then demonstrated the proper technique. Grip tight, watch your footing, move deliberately. "Team, follow me." One by one, the Marines and SEALs began their climb. Amanda's technique was flawless, careful, calculated, and precise. Even with one arm, she moved efficiently, guiding her team through verbal commands and gestures. When Dean's grip slipped, she anchored him instantly, preventing a fall. The team exhaled collectively, their respect solidified by her actions. "Never underestimate the value of focus," she said, brushing mud from her face. "Control your fear. Control your body. Leadership is earned through action, not appearance." The SEALs completed the rope wall with fluid precision, but it was Amanda's team that captured attention. They moved as a cohesive unit, adapting to the SEAL's presence, executing her commands, and covering each other with care. Brooks observed quietly, satisfied. This was the moment he had envisioned, the wounded Marine demonstrating true leadership under the scrutiny of the most elite soldiers in the country. Next came the trench crawl. SEALs went first, demonstrating efficiency, their movements precise and almost effortless. Amanda's team followed, her instructions calm and deliberate. "Ramirez, support Dean. Keep low. Eyes forward. Team, maintain formation." Every command landed with authority, every action executed with purpose. When a Marine stumbled, Amanda adjusted him swiftly, her prosthetic providing balance and leverage. Dean, struggling to keep pace, looked back at Amanda. I thought this was impossible," he admitted, his voice trembling with exhaustion. I underestimated you." Amanda didn't respond with words. Her calm gaze was answer enough. She moved forward, one-armed, mud and sweat streaked across her uniform, setting the pace. Actions, not words, were her teaching tools. The final obstacle, A jagged incline leading to a narrow platform awaited. Even the SEALs regarded it with calculated caution. Amanda sized it up, then moved first, demonstrating balance, technique, and composure. Team, follow carefully. Step by step. Don't rush, don't falter. Trust me, can trust each other. One SEAL faltered, ankle twisting slightly. Amanda didn't hesitate. She carried part of his load, adjusting her body and stride to accommodate both herself and the SEAL. The Marines watched in awe. Their leader was not just keeping pace with the best of the best. She was carrying them forward, ensuring no one failed. Brooks's jaw tightened slightly. This was beyond physical skill. This was courage, leadership, and morality displayed in its purest form. "This is what I call leadership under pressure," he muttered to a fellow SEAL. The team finally reached the platform, breaths ragged, faces caked in mud, yet expressions transformed. Pride, awe, and respect replaced doubt and hesitation. Even Dean, who had mocked her initially, saluted silently, his voice catching as he muttered, "Thank you, Sergeant." Amanda merely nodded, not seeking praise. Leadership wasn't about recognition. It was about results, trust, and the ability to inspire. Brooks stepped forward, whistle in hand. "Regroup." "Well done," he called. The SEALs fell into formation beside him. "Let's make one thing clear. Courage, leadership, and respect aren't determined by gender, appearance, or past injury. They're proven through action. And today, Sergeant Keller has shown all of you exactly what that looks like." Silence hung over the group. Every Marine present felt the weight of his words. They glanced at Amanda, mud-soaked, sweat-streaked, cane in hand, prosthetic hidden beneath her uniform. The same Marine they had doubted, mocked, and pitied had just led them, and even elite SEALs, through a course that demanded not just strength, but courage, strategy, and moral fortitude. Dean finally stepped forward, extending his hand. "Sergeant, I misjudged you," he said quietly, eyes downcast. You taught me something I'll never forget." Amanda accepted the handshake, a faint smile brushing her lips. "Don't focus on me," she said. "Focus on what you can do for yourself and your team. That's what leadership is." Brooks surveyed the field, nodding silently. The lesson had been learned. Prejudice, doubt, and arrogance had been replaced with respect, humility, and awe. The SEALs had entered to observe, but the true demonstration had already occurred, and it came from a woman who had lost an arm, yet refused to lose her courage, her authority, or her integrity. By the time the sun climbed high into the sky, the Marines had been transformed. What began as skepticism had become recognition, hesitation replaced by determination, and doubt converted into respect. Amanda Keller had done more than lead an obstacle course. She had taught a lesson in courage, leadership, and humanity that no lecture or manual could ever convey. As the field quieted, Amanda wiped the sweat and mud from her face, her eyes scanning the exhausted but transformed Marines. Brooks gave a subtle nod, the ultimate approval. The lesson was clear. Courage is proven in action. Leadership is earned through decisiveness, and respect is commanded by deeds, not assumptions. The SEALs fell back, allowing the Marines to absorb the magnitude of the day. And in that quiet moment, Amanda knew the lesson would stick, not because it was forced upon them, but because they had witnessed it up close and survived it with her as their guide. The sun had begun its descent, casting long golden shadows across the mud-slicked training field. The Marines were exhausted, bodies trembling from the day's physical and emotional exertion. Sweat and grime coated every face, yet their eyes burned with newfound clarity. They had survived the obstacle course, faced elite SEALs, and, most importantly, had witnessed Sergeant Amanda Keller, a wounded Marine, lead them through challenges they had once considered impossible. Brooks stood at the edge of the field, arms folded, observing the group. He knew the time had come to ensure the lesson penetrated deeper than admiration and awe. Leadership, courage, and respect were abstract concepts until they were internalized through experience. Today, that internalization would be cemented. Amanda stepped forward, cane in hand, prosthetic arm hidden beneath her uniform sleeve. She didn't look at the Marines with triumph or pride. She looked at them with measured calm, the authority of someone who had faced adversity and understood the true cost of survival. Today wasn't just about an obstacle course, she began, her voice carrying over the quiet field. The Marines instinctively straightened, attention captured. It wasn't about speed, strength, or who could climb higher. It was about something far more important: how you respond under pressure, how you lead, and how you respect those who have walked through fire before you. Dean, still mud-caked and exhausted, shifted uncomfortably. He had spent the day grappling with embarrassment, awe, and a growing understanding of what leadership truly meant. He wasn't the only one. Around him, the younger Marines, once smirking skeptics, hung on every word, faces etched with humility and reflection. Amanda's eyes swept over the team. When you doubted me yesterday, it didn't matter. I didn't need your approval. I needed your attention, your focus, and your willingness to follow when the moment demanded it. Leadership is earned, not assumed. Respect is proven, not demanded. Courage is measured not by what you can do alone, but by how you act when others depend on you. A hush fell over the field. Even the SEALs, hardened veterans of countless covert operations, watched silently. They had witnessed leadership countless times, yet there was something about Amanda's presence, quiet, resolute, unshakable, that transcended physical ability. She was not leading because of strength, or rank, or fear. She was leading because she embodied the qualities that inspired others to follow, even under extreme adversity. She stepped closer to Dean. You mocked me, questioned my abilities, and assumed I couldn't lead because of my injury, she said gently but firmly. And that's okay. It's human to judge what you don't understand. But I hope today taught you something important. Never underestimate someone's determination, their resilience, or their courage. Those are the things that define a warrior. Dean's shoulders slumped, shame and understanding washing over him. Yes, Sergeant, he whispered, voice cracking. I understand now. Amanda nodded and turned to the rest of the Marines. This isn't just about me, or today, or the course. It's about how you carry yourselves in every challenge you'll face, whether in combat, in training, or in life. Leadership, courage, and respect are earned through action. They are tested under pressure, refined in adversity, and proven in the choices you make for those who follow you. The team absorbed her words, the weight of their significance settling deep within each Marine. The younger recruits, who had doubted her at first, now saw not a wounded soldier, but a leader whose experience, discipline, and courage demanded respect. Even the most skeptical Marines exchanged glances, a silent acknowledgement passing between them. They had been wrong to judge, and they had been taught a lesson that would endure far beyond this field. Brooks stepped forward, voice cutting through the stillness. Observe closely, he said, gesturing to the SEALs. You've watched Sergeant Keller lead under extreme conditions. Now watch how elite forces respect and respond to leadership. The SEALs, stoic and imposing, stepped forward. Chief Ryan Brooks signaled them to halt, then spoke. You see them, the best of the best, trained in environments designed to break men and women alike. Yet they follow, they trust, and they adapt. Why? Because they recognize true leadership when they see it. And today, you've all seen it embodied in Sergeant Keller. Amanda remained silent, letting the weight of Brooks' words and her presence sink in. There was no boast, no celebration. Leadership didn't need applause. It needed recognition, reflection, and application. The lesson had been taught. Now it was up to the Marines to internalize it. Dean took a deep breath, finally breaking the silence. "Sergeant, I can't believe I doubted you. You've taught me more in a day than I've learned in months of training. I won't forget this." Amanda gave a small, approving nod. "Good. Don't forget it. Remember, every decision you make, every action you take, has consequences for yourself and those who follow you. Leadership is responsibility. Courage is action. Respect is earned through deeds, not appearances." A wave of realization swept through the team. The whispers of doubt and disrespect from yesterday were gone, replaced by reflection, admiration, and a renewed sense of purpose. Even the SEALs, observing the transformation, exchanged subtle nods. Amanda's lesson had penetrated not just the body, but the mind, instilling values that would remain long after the mud and sweat had dried. Brooks raised his hand, signaling the end of the exercise. "Today was more than a drill," he said firmly. "It was a demonstration of the principles that define warriors. Leadership, courage, and respect are tested every day, in every mission, and in every decision. Sergeant Keller has shown you all how it's done. Let this lesson guide you, not just in training, but in life." The Marines stood in silence, absorbing the full impact of the day. They were tired, physically drained, and mentally exhausted. Yet a profound transformation had taken place. The skepticism, arrogance, and doubt that had filled the air yesterday had been replaced by focus, humility, and respect. They had witnessed the power of leadership that transcended gender, injury, and assumptions. Amanda took a final step forward, cane tapping lightly on the ground. "This isn't about me. It's about what you'll carry forward. Leadership isn't something you claim. It's something you prove every day, in every action, for those who follow you. Don't forget that." For the first time, Dean spoke for the entire team. "We won't, Sergeant. Thank you for showing us what true courage and leadership look like." Amanda allowed herself a small smile, one not of pride, but of satisfaction. The lesson had been delivered, and it had landed. The Marines, once doubtful and dismissive, had been transformed. They had learned to recognize courage, respect leadership, and understand that true strength isn't measured by appearances. It's measured by action, resilience, and the willingness to face challenges head-on. Brooks stepped forward again, voice low but deliberate. "Remember this day. Let it guide you, inspire you, and remind you that assumptions can blind you. Courage, leadership, and respect are earned, never given. Sergeant Keller has proven it. The question now is, will you?" The team stood, silent, reflecting on the magnitude of the moment. Amanda Keller's presence, her determination, and her unwavering courage had done more than lead them through an obstacle course. She had reshaped their understanding of leadership itself, leaving an indelible impression on every Marine present. The sun dipped lower on the horizon, bathing the field in a warm, golden glow. Exhaustion, mud, and sweat coated the Marines, yet their eyes shone with clarity, understanding, and newfound respect. They had faced a challenge, witnessed true leadership, and learned a lesson they would carry for the rest of their lives. And in that quiet, transformative moment, Amanda Keller, a wounded Marine who had returned from battle with more than scars, stood as proof that courage, integrity, and leadership cannot be defined by circumstance, physicality, or perception. They are defined by action, presence, and the willingness to rise above doubt, fear, and limitation. The evening air settled over the training field like a comforting blanket. The sun had dipped below the horizon, casting long, soft shadows over the mud-caked terrain. The Marines were exhausted, yet a profound quiet had taken hold, the kind that follows intense trials when lessons have been internalized. The field, once chaotic and filled with doubt, now held a sense of solemn achievement. Amanda Keller stood near the center, cane lightly tapping against the ground, her silhouette illuminated by the fading sunlight. She scanned the group of Marines, each one still wearing the marks of their struggle, sweat-streaked faces, torn uniforms, mud clinging to boots. But beyond the physical evidence lay something deeper, a transformation of mindset, a newfound understanding of what it meant to lead, to follow, and to earn respect. Dean, sitting on a mud-stained log, finally spoke, breaking the silence. "I've never seen anything like that," he admitted quietly. "I thought leadership was about power or strength, but it's about courage and how you lift others." His voice carried a mix of exhaustion and reverence, a reflection of the day's impact. Amanda nodded subtly, a small smile brushing her lips. "Exactly," she said. "Leadership isn't about being the strongest or fastest. It's about making sure your team survives, grows, and succeeds, even if it costs you. Courage is measured by what you do when no one else can or will. And respect? Respect is earned, never assumed." Around the group, other Marines nodded silently. The ones who had whispered doubts, laughed at her injuries, or underestimated her had now been humbled. They had followed her through mud pits, rope walls, and trenches, and in doing so, they had learned firsthand the value of true leadership. The memory of yesterday's skepticism now seemed almost distant, replaced by admiration and self-reflection. Brooks approached, his presence commanding yet composed. The SEALs fell in formation behind him, silent observers of the transformation. "Today wasn't about winning an obstacle course," he began, his voice steady. "It was about proving that leadership isn't measured by appearances, but by action, resilience, and integrity. Sergeant Keller has shown you what it looks like in practice." Dean stood and faced the group. "I misjudged her." "We all did," he admitted. "But watching her lead, watching her respond under pressure, it changed how I see everything. She taught us how to move, how to think, and how to act when it matters most." His words were met with nods and quiet murmurs of agreement. Amanda approached the younger Marines, her cane tapping lightly. "Take this lesson with you," she said, her voice steady, calm, and deliberate. "Every time you face doubt, every time someone underestimates you, remember what you've learned. Leadership, courage, and respect aren't titles or appearances. They're actions, and they're tested every day." A subtle energy had spread through the team. They were exhausted, yes, but more importantly, they were inspired. The day had been grueling, pushing both physical and mental limits. Yet, it had accomplished something far greater, a shift in mindset. The Marines were no longer preoccupied with ego, skepticism, or doubt. They were now focused on cohesion, trust, and accountability. Brooks stepped closer to Amanda, his expression unreadable. "You've done more than lead them through drills," he said quietly. "You've shown them courage in action, and they've witnessed it firsthand. Not just your strength, but your authority, your presence, and your resolve. That's something they'll carry with them for life." Amanda glanced at him, her eyes thoughtful but serene. "It wasn't about me," she replied. "It was about them. About showing them that obstacles, physical or mental, can be overcome. That strength isn't always visible, and courage isn't always loud. Sometimes it's quiet, steadfast, and unwavering." The SEALs began packing up, their presence no longer a looming pressure, but a quiet affirmation of the lesson delivered. The Marines watched them move, noting their discipline, skill, and calm efficiency. If the elite SEALs respected the leadership demonstrated by a wounded Marine, then it was undeniable. Respect and courage transcended assumptions. As the team gathered for a final debrief, Dean spoke again, addressing the group this time. "We all learned something today," he said, voice steady and reflective. "It's not just about completing courses or following orders. It's about how we act under pressure, how we support each other, and how we respect those who lead. Sergeant Keller taught us that lesson, and I won't forget it." Other Marines voiced similar sentiments, quietly acknowledging their own transformation. The skepticism and subtle arrogance that had filled the air earlier in the week had evaporated. In its place was clarity, humility, and a shared understanding of what it meant to truly lead. Amanda stepped forward one last time. "Remember," she said, voice calm but resolute, "the real test isn't today. The real test is every day that follows. In combat, in training, in life, leadership, courage, and respect will be tested. And when that moment comes, don't ask who will do it. Step up, act, and set the example. That's what it means to be a Marine." A quiet stillness enveloped the field. The Marines, exhausted yet transformed, absorbed the full weight of her words. They weren't just instructions. They were a philosophy, a guide for life, and a challenge to live up to the example they had witnessed. Brooks finally addressed the group, his voice firm. "This is what distinguishes warriors from the rest. You faced a test not just of strength, but of character. What you learned today will define you in ways you don't yet realize." Sergeant Keller didn't just lead, she inspired. And that inspiration is what you'll carry forward. Dean, standing beside Amanda, looked around at the group, then at her. "You know," he said quietly, "most of us thought we knew what courage was. But today we saw it differently. It's not about the weapons you carry or the battles you fight. It's about the choices you make, the people you protect, and the actions you take when no one's watching." Amanda's eyes softened. She had returned from battle scarred, underestimated, and often overlooked. Yet in that moment, she realized that her mission here had been accomplished. She had transformed doubt into respect, fear into admiration, and in doing so, had left a permanent mark on the lives of these Marines. The field was quiet as the last rays of sunlight fell, painting the sky with deep reds and golds. Mud, sweat, and exhaustion coated the Marines, yet their postures were upright, their eyes clear and focused. The transformation was complete, subtle, yet profound. They had learned what words alone could never teach. Amanda's team, once doubters and skeptics, now moved with cohesion, confidence, and silent pride. The SEALs had observed, Brooks had guided, and Amanda had led. Together, they had demonstrated that true leadership is not about fear or force, but about courage, integrity, and the ability to inspire others through action. As the Marines began to disperse, Amanda took a moment to glance across the field, her gaze settling on the horizon. The training ground, once a site of doubt and underestimation, had been transformed. It now reflected the resilience, respect, and leadership that had been forged here today. And though the mud would wash away, and the bruises would fade, the lesson would endure, etched into the minds and hearts of every Marine who had been present. The courage of a wounded Marine had taught them something far greater than any obstacle course could, the meaning of true leadership, respect, and unwavering courage. The morning after the final exercise, the training field was quiet, almost serene. The mud had dried into hardened patches. The rope walls and trenches, still marked by footprints and sweat-streaked impressions. The sun rose slowly over Camp Pendleton, casting a soft, golden glow on the exhausted yet transformed Marines. Today, the field bore witness not just to physical endurance, but to a lesson that would endure far beyond the drills. Sergeant Amanda Keller stood at the center of the field, her cane tapping lightly against the ground. The prosthetic arm beneath her uniform was almost invisible, yet its presence was a reminder of battles fought and obstacles overcome. She scanned the group, noting the Marines' postures. Upright, disciplined, and infused with a quiet confidence. They were no longer just recruits or skeptics. They had become witnesses to courage, leadership, and resilience in its purest form. Dean approached first, still mud-streaked and exhausted, but with a newfound seriousness in his expression. "Sergeant," he said, voice firm yet reverent, "what you've taught us. It's something we'll carry with us every day. Not just on the field, but in life. I don't think any of us will forget it." Amanda's gaze softened. "That's the hope," she said quietly. "Lessons aren't truly learned until they're applied, not just observed. Courage, leadership, and respect aren't theoretical. They're proven through action, and they endure because of the choices you make afterward." The other Marines gathered around, faces streaked with grime, eyes bright with understanding. They had seen her lead through exhaustion, danger, and skepticism. They had witnessed her save lives, guide them through impossible challenges, and earn the trust and admiration of SEALs, some of the most elite soldiers in the world. The transformation had been profound, reshaping their understanding of what it meant to lead and to follow. Chief Petty Officer Brooks stepped forward, his expression unreadable, but his voice carrying quiet authority. "You've seen the best of the best," he said, gesturing to the SEALs who remained in formation nearby. "They've watched, evaluated, and learned as well. But what makes today remarkable isn't just skill or endurance. It's leadership proven under extreme conditions. And Sergeant Keller has shown every one of you what that looks like." A hush fell over the Marines. Even the SEALs, normally reserved and stoic, nodded in recognition. They had witnessed a lesson in courage, decisiveness, and moral authority that could not be taught in a classroom or manual. It was living proof, demonstrated in action. Amanda turned to face the group fully, her eyes scanning each Marine. "This field, these obstacles, this exercise, they will fade from memory in terms of specifics," she said. "But the lesson doesn't. It's in how you carry yourselves, how you act when challenged, and how you inspire those around you. Leadership is not about rank or appearances. Courage is not about strength or size. Respect is not demanded. It is earned through integrity, action, and empathy." Dean stepped forward, finally breaking the silence. "Sergeant, at first, I thought this was just another obstacle course. But now I see it differently. We didn't just learn to climb walls or cross trenches. We learned to trust, to act with courage, and to respect those who earn it. And you taught us all that." Amanda allowed herself a small smile. "Good, that's the lesson. It's yours now to carry forward. Don't waste it. Apply it. Live it. And never underestimate the impact one person can have when they lead with integrity and courage." The SEALs moved closer, standing beside Brooks. They had entered to test the Marines, to observe, and perhaps to challenge Amanda's leadership. But the outcome had been clear. She had led not just a team, but an entire mindset transformation. Her actions had proven that courage transcends physical limitations, and that leadership is earned by those who act decisively and with care under pressure. A Marine who had once mocked her injury stepped forward, voice quiet but firm. "Sergeant, I misjudged you. Today, you've shown me that real strength isn't in muscle or weapons, but in the will to act, even when others doubt you. Thank you." Amanda nodded, eyes meeting his. "Remember that. The real battlefield isn't just out there," she said, gesturing toward the training obstacles. "It's wherever you face doubt, fear, or resistance. Leadership, courage, and respect will always be tested. And when it is, don't hesitate. Step up, act, lead." Brooks spoke again, breaking the momentary silence. "Today, you've learned more than tactics. You've witnessed a living example of leadership under pressure. You've seen that courage isn't defined by physical perfection, and that respect is earned, not assumed. Sergeant Keller's actions are a legacy, one you'll carry with you for the rest of your careers. The Marines absorbed his words. It wasn't just the physical challenge they would remember. It was the lesson, the transformation, and the example of a Marine who had refused to be defined by her injury, and instead had defined leadership for everyone present. Amanda glanced across the field one last time. The sun had nearly set, bathing the ground in a deep, warm light. The shadows stretched long and purposeful, much like the impact of today's lesson. She could see it in the posture, the expressions, and the quiet confidence of the Marines. The transformation wasn't just immediate. It would ripple into every mission, every challenge, and every team they would encounter. Dean spoke one final time, voice filled with quiet reverence. I don't think any of us will ever forget this day. Not the obstacles, not the mud, not even the SEALs. We'll remember you, Sergeant, and what you showed us. That's something we can take into every challenge, forever. Amanda allowed herself a rare moment of reflection. She had returned from combat wounded, underestimated, and doubted by many. Yet through action, courage, and unwavering commitment, she had taught a lesson that no Marine could forget. The respect she earned, the transformation she inspired, and the example she set would endure far beyond this single training exercise. Brooks finally nodded, signaling the end of the session. The SEALs fell back, their presence now more symbolic than intimidating. The Marines began to disperse, heads held high, steps measured, and a newfound sense of purpose in every movement. The field, once chaotic and fraught with doubt, had been transformed into a crucible of courage, leadership, and respect. Amanda remained at the center for a moment, cane tapping lightly. She watched the Marines leave, knowing that her mission had been accomplished. Today, she had done more than lead a team through drills. She had changed perspectives, reshaped understanding, and left a legacy that would endure in every Marine who had witnessed it. As the last light of day faded over Camp Pendleton, one truth remained clear. Courage is measured by action. Leadership is proven through guidance and care. And respect is earned by those who rise above doubt, fear, and limitation. Sergeant Amanda Keller had exemplified all of these qualities. She had walked among doubt and skepticism, faced the challenge, and emerged as an undeniable example of the power of resilience and determination. The field grew quiet, yet the echoes of her lesson lingered in the minds of every Marine. The mud, sweat, and fatigue would fade with time, but the lesson, the legacy, would remain. Courage, leadership, and respect had been proven, and a wounded Marine had assured that no one present would ever forget it. And in the hearts of the Marines, the lesson would continue to inspire, guide, and challenge them long after they left the field.